which makes a variety of claims, but primarily that the Zoom, the virtual certification process is not adequate to gain input from the public. That is now being considered by a judge. She has put a temporary stay on it, and she is considering how to proceed. So we'll keep you up to date on those changes. And as soon as we have a decision from her, we will act accordingly. My understanding, or my understanding is the wrong word. My sense is that she will probably go ahead, perhaps with some restrictions. So with that in mind, I was talking with a variety of people, and if anyone has a suggestion, and I'm not looking to have them now, but I mean, I do ask you to submit them to the board office for how we can improve this process for a large audience and to make sure that all of the people that want to speak are able to speak. If you have a suggestion, if you're a technology person and you have something that we can use that would make it easier for people to both hear and understand what the city wants to do, and also to make their views clear to the members of the committee, I ask you to submit that to the board office, in the next week or so. And then the executive committee will look at those ideas. And if we are interested in hearing from you with more information about your idea, we may invite you to a virtual executive committee meeting to hear about those ideas and to see if we can flesh them out and turn them into something that will make the virtual hearing process more responsive to members of the community. I don't want to predict how the judge is going to rule, so that's all I'm going to say, but just so that we are prepared, and in case a suggestion also would work for something else, one of our other virtual meetings, or a less important issue. If you have an idea, even if you don't have all the technology to submit it, but you have the idea, please pass it on to the board office by email, and we will we'll look at those ideas. And as I said, if we want to hear more from you, we will do that. So I appreciate that. So it is a fairly light month for us. We did not have any meetings that resulted in votes that need to be taken. I don't know if, I know Mike said he was going to be a little bit late. I don't know if he's on yet.
He's not on.
I haven't seen him.
Yeah, no. So, all right. So what we're going to do is Mike invited a representative from Methodist Hospital to speak about the vaccine process. So we're going to hear from them. I remind them that they need to unmute themselves. But I'll ask, and then we will entertain, a few questions after they make their presentation. So I invite them to speak now and to tell us some information about the vaccine process.
Hi, Peter. Thank you so much. This is Lauren Avellino. I'm Manager of Community Affairs at New York Presbyterian Brooklyn Methodist Hospital. Many of you have seen me before the CD6 General Board meetings. We are very excited to have the opportunity to be here and to talk to you about the COVID-19 vaccine. We are going to give you some information, hopefully answer your questions. We have a team here of 3 amazing emergency room physicians who are going to speak to you. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Samuel Ayala to give a little introduction of himself.
Hi everyone. Can you guys hear me? Good. I'm probably have been at Methodist the least amount of time, and that's since 2013. I've been a emergency medicine doctor since, finishing training in 2013 at Jacoby Medical Center, came to Methodist to do an ultrasound fellowship, and have ever since been here at Methodist to teach ultrasound and medical education to students from whoever wants to learn. And I'm excited to have you guys have me on as a panelist.
Thanks, Dr. Ayala. Dr. Kelly?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Chris Kelly. I guess I've been at Methodist a little bit longer. I think I'm celebrating my 16th year, and I am the director of the Pediatric Emergency Department there at NYP Brooklyn Methodist Hospital. Happy to be here.
Thank you. And finally, Dr. Melville.
Hi, I'm Laura Melville. I guess we're going by age. So I'm the oldest, and I've been in Brooklyn for a long time, but at Methodist for almost 20 years, trained at Kings County. I am the Associate Research Director for the Emergency Medicine Program. I'm also our Sexual Assault Forensic Examiner, Medical Director. And I'm really excited to have this opportunity to talk about the COVID-19 vaccine.
And are you a member of community boards? Are you do you live in the district?
I do. I live in I think I live on Dean between 6th and Carlton. So I think that's part of the community board. Yeah.
Great. Thank you to our panel. With that, I'm going to begin sharing my screen. We have some slides and some information that we want to share with you all. And I see that there's an interpreter, which is fabulous. So I'm going to start sharing. And I believe Dr. Kelly is going to kick us off.
Advance. Great. Okay, so our purpose really here tonight is to educate everybody about the COVID-19 vaccine. And so I just thought I'd start off by discussing what is COVID-19. And SARS-CoV-2 is actually the name of the virus itself. And as you can see on our slide, we've got a little picture of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And what does this stand for? SARS is severe acute respiratory syndrome, and CoV is coronavirus. And the reason I bring this up is because it's called coronavirus because corona actually means crown. And so as you can see, it looks like a gray ball with this red crown of what we call spike proteins, which are going to be important later on. COVID-19 is actually the name of the illnesses that the SARS-CoV-2 virus cause. And it's with these spike proteins, which really kind of give it its ability to infect people. Now, we typically know that this virus is spread through droplet or airborne transmission. And what does that mean? It means that these little tiny microscopic particles are released into the air every time we yell or sing, when we cough or when we sneeze. And they're the main reasons why we are wearing masks and encouraging people to socially distance and wash their hands a whole bunch. And as we know, the coronavirus actually spreads pretty easily. And although most people will get a mild illness, when we look at coronavirus across the board, the infections, most people will have only a mild illness, meaning they might have a little cough or a cold symptoms. They might have a lack of taste, a lack of their ability to smell. Some people present with gastrointestinal symptoms, meaning they might have some diarrhea, abdominal pain, or vomiting. That's a majority of our symptoms. But all of us that have lived here in Brooklyn and in New York City for the past year know that coronavirus can be so much more than that. And it's really, really scary because even currently we have 120,000 people that are admitted to hospitals for SARS-CoV-2 virus or COVID-19 illness that have severe illness. We've seen the numbers. We've surpassed 400,000 people that have died from this horrible, horrible pandemic. And that's just in the US alone. And we've actually gone over 2 million people worldwide. But that's it for the doom and gloom. That's not our goal here tonight. Our goal here tonight is to really talk about the light at the end of the tunnel. Can we go on to the next slide, please? Why should I get vaccinated? This is the light at the end of the tunnel. This is what's going to help us get through all of this stuff. The most important reason that anybody should get vaccinated is because it's going to protect yourself. Unfortunately, although we can say, well, coronavirus really affects the elderly, or it might affect somebody that's African American or Hispanic, or somebody with underlying conditions such as hypertension or diabetes, we still don't know who's going to ultimately get really, really sick from this and potentially die from it. Most of us know somebody in one way or another that's been tragically affected by this horrible, horrible virus. And so this is a great way for us to protect ourselves first and foremost. And what most people don't realize is that we've all seen the news. We've all seen how crazy hard it is to get the vaccine, how there are lots of people that won't be eligible for a while. By you taking advantage of this really golden opportunity to get this vaccine, if you are eligible, not only are you protecting yourself, but you're protecting your family. You're protecting the community, the people at the grocery store that you might shop at, or perhaps a family member that might have one of those underlying conditions. The ultimate goal is that the more we can reduce the number of people in our society, in our community of New York State, New York City, of Brooklyn, the less that this is most likely going to be spread to those people. And it's truly, truly our best way of hoping to end this pandemic. You can go to the next slide. So how do vaccines work? Okay, this is what we're really, really excited about. All of us in the healthcare system have been praying for this time to come, and it's finally here. Well, really, to simplify things as much as possible, a vaccine works by showing your immune system what a piece of the virus looks like, essentially a mugshot of the coronavirus. Now, I run the pediatric emergency department, so I always go back to all the kids' vaccines, all the shots that you have to bring your children in at 2, 4, 6 months. And one of the things that people are always concerned about when we think of those vaccines is that when we give those vaccines, those are actually what we call dead or attenuated virus, a weakened virus. And so there's this fear that when we give these kind of vaccines, what happens is our body recognizes it and it creates these immune cells and these antibodies that help fight it. Well, with those old vaccines, we actually have to give a weakened form. So what does that mean? Let's take the measles, for example. If I'm going to give my child the measles vaccine, we actually give them a weakened form of the measles that they can easily fight. And what that happens is that once we give that to the body, it creates these antibodies so that if it ever sees the measles in the real world, it then has this line of defense that it can attack it and it prevents us from getting sick. Now, if we can go on to the next slide. Look, one back. What's really mind-blowing in an amazing way is that the new vaccines that we see, the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines, actually don't work that way anymore. We are not giving the body a weakened form of the coronavirus. We are not giving it a dead form of the coronavirus. Instead, this is called a messenger RNA or an mRNA vaccine, which has been around for many, many years, but this is really our golden opportunity to show how effective it can be. And really what this does in a nutshell is, if you remember before, we talked about those red spike proteins, and those proteins are responsible for helping the virus get into our cells and help us infect people. Well, as opposed to giving them damaged spike proteins or dead spike proteins, what you can think of this as is the messenger RNA is a messenger. It's like sending an email to the cells which say, hey, we want you guys to look for these red spike proteins. In fact, these are the blueprints for them. This is what's going to help you determine what's bad. And it actually helps the body create those spike proteins. It doesn't create the virus itself because we don't have the virus, but it creates that crown, those red spike proteins. And that's what we develop antibodies to. It's a lot of words. The most important take-home part of this is that you are not getting the coronavirus when you get the coronavirus vaccine. You are simply getting a means for the body to recognize those spike proteins. And that means that there's no possible way of you getting coronavirus from when you get the vaccine. Now, there's a lot of other things about safety, and I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Melville, who's going to take over from here.
Thanks, Dr. Kelly. So I think that is the big question, right? For a lot of people is this vaccine safe? And many people are concerned that it might not be safe, especially because they heard it was made too quickly, or maybe there were shortcuts taken, right? There's been a lot of politics around the development of the vaccine, and that's really, really unfortunate. In fact, the COVID-19 vaccine, all of the ones that are out there, including the Pfizer and Moderna, are based on decades of research on similar viruses. And because this research had been going on for such a long time, the timelines of the usual process were able to be overlapped. And I'm going to go into, I'm going to show you a visual of that that'll help make it more easy to see. but all of the safety standards and expert reviews were still used in bringing this vaccine forward and then allowing it to be given to the community. So let's start with how traditionally vaccines are made. And this is usually a very long process, and it takes many, many years. And just for context, one of the reasons why this takes so long is because it's not that common that there are thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of people who are actually getting infected with whatever it is we're trying to fight. Usually, maybe it's a few thousand people. It's everything is on a much smaller scale. So the many, many years of research go into just understanding the virus or bacteria itself, figuring out how it works, and really coming up with what are the best mechanisms to fight it. The next step are the phased trials. So clinical trials are phase 1, 2, and 3. And just very, very briefly, phase 1 trials are essentially safety focused. They make sure that people aren't being harmed by the vaccine. Phase 2 is efficacy, or does it work, right? Is this virus useful? Is this vaccine, useful? And then phase 3 starts when it looks like the vaccine is both safe and useful, and now it's ready to be tested in very large numbers. Once that's complete, it goes to the FDA, the CDC, it's reviewed, and then, and only then, it goes into production, because that is the only time companies can afford to put in the kind of money that it takes to ramp up supply. So that's traditional. Moving on. What happened this time is we've been very unlucky in this coronavirus pandemic, but in one way we were lucky. We were lucky in that scientists already knew coronaviruses were going to be a problem. Many of you remember the SARS and MERS outbreaks, and these really alerted the scientific community to be aware that this type of vaccine has a lot of potential to cause trouble. So research had been going on for decades to try to get a vaccine for those viruses. That research was able to be very quickly adapted to the current coronavirus, the SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19, right? So quickly they were able to move into these phase 1 trials. Because we had so many patients who were getting infected, it was easy to move. Phase 1 showed safety very quickly, and phase 2 was able to go very quickly for the sad reason that there were so many patients getting infected. So we were able to see that there was a difference between the people getting the vaccine and those who didn't. So that allowed for these vaccines to go into phase 3 very quickly. Now, at the same time, the government invested money in these companies and said, look, we know some of these may work, some of them may not work, but we're going to give you the money to go into production until even before we know whether it's going to be effective, so that as soon as we can tell that something is going to work, we can ramp up that production. And in this country, it was the Moderna. In Germany and in Europe, it was Pfizer. And because of that, we were able to very quickly move to the FDA and CDC expert review when the phase 3 trials came out and were showing effectiveness. I have to say it's very reassuring that there are 2 different companies with the same type of vaccine that both show safety and efficacy, safety and effectiveness. So that says that their individual stake in the game, right? The fact that they are, of course, hoping to eventually, make a profit from this, is not overly influencing the results, because these are 2 separate companies and they both came out with very similar results. So because of that, we've been able to move to emergency approval, and we're quickly moving towards general approval. These are some of the numbers from Pfizer and Moderna. And it's important to look at the number of people tested in each trial. So together we're looking at close to 80,000 people, and at least 30% of those are minority and older patients. And that's really, really important. We want to see bigger numbers, we want to see more, but for where we are at, this is pretty good. the difference in protection comes from the number of people who became ill with COVID-19 disease in the group that got placebo, which is essentially saline. It's a non-active substance, versus the group that got vaccine. And as you can see, these are very significant differences. So even though those numbers are small, it's still really important. And we can say that the groups were very similar types of people. And that's also very reassuring. So that's the data. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Sam Ayala to talk to you more about some of the things that people really worry about.
Hi, everyone. Thank you again for having me. And I want to just thank Dr. Kelly and Dr. Melville for doing all the hard work and speaking about all the science. They speak so eloquently. You guys can hear me pretty good, I hope. All right. So first question, will this vaccine hurt my community? All right. So we have to think about what Dr. Melville just had mentioned previously, that this was tested on a wide, diverse scientific community, not only in the United States, but across the world. A lot of different researchers came together, were able to share information to make these very, very robust vaccines, right? There's a lot of information there. There's still some information we do not have, all right? Now, again, this is a diverse population of not only men, women, children, the different ages, all right, and also different communities. And I specifically want to talk in this instance about the Black and Latino communities, which have been hit so hard, especially in the New York City community and around the country, and have suffered greatly, all right? Hopefully you can get back to normal soon, but just talking about these communities, these are the communities, heavy number that we actually see at Brooklyn Methodist Hospital, all right, that we have to, one, convince, all right, to get healthcare and convince that this is a pandemic that is truly ravaging their community. I myself am Latino. I take a lot of pride in talking to my Latino patients, colleagues, and even my African-American, both women and men, all right? I know it historically can be really hard for them to trust something that, like they said, has come out so quickly, and they wonder if it's gonna hurt them, all right? But trust me, getting the COVID illness is not fun. All right, talking from personal experience. Next slide here. I get giddy every time I see this young lady. She was an African-American woman, and a woman for that matter. She was the actual person to develop the Moderna vaccine. I'm not gonna destroy her name, Kizmikia Kizi Shanta Corbeil. She's a viral immunologist at the Vaccine Research Center at the NIH, Allergy Infectious Diseases in Bethesda. I'm going to actually read a quote directly from her that I have not memorized. Dr. Corbett, on vaccine hesitancy, we're not going to be able to prove trustworthiness in this instant quickly. And that is okay. All right, someone who actually made the vaccine. But trust, especially when it has been stripped from people, has to be rebuilt in a brick by brick fashion. And I'm going to do my part in laying those bricks. And this is coming from a woman and an African-American. And we know historically that has been really tough when it comes to research, all right, on these populations, all right, that have been abused in the past. Next slide. So next question, what can I expect after getting the vaccine? All right. I myself have gotten both the first and second shot of the Pfizer, along with a lot of my other colleagues and the panelists as well, other panelists that are here. What did I expect when I got the first one? All right. So it's a shot. So there's gonna be a needle. All right. You're gonna have a little bit of arm pain, swelling. I would recommend doing the non-dominant side. They inject right into the deltoid muscle. All right. They're going to keep you in the room for about 15 minutes to 30 minutes. All right. And we'll have a question and answer session about potentially people that have had allergies before. But after that observation time, you're going to go home and what to expect. All right. Some side effects, some fatigue, a little tired, a little joint pain. Your arm feels like somebody punched you there. To me, it felt like my older brother punched me in the arm like he used to when I was younger. A little bit of headache, chills, and less commonly fever. I also experienced a little bit of nausea, but that quickly goes within a day or two. Second dose, which is a little different for each vaccine. I happened to get the Pfizer. That was 21 days later. Second dose, also same arm. What are you going to expect? Some fatigue, more fatigue, but a little bit more achy. Pretty tired. I ended up sleeping most of the day, and luckily our boss gave us the next day off. Some aches. It's actually more common, all right, from data and CDC saying that you should expect potentially a fever, more nausea, more headache. And I've even had to treat some of these patients that come to the ER that actually think they potentially have corona. All right. Now, side effects are normal signs that your body's building protection. All right. It's a normal response to the body, especially with the second vaccine. All right. I do want to say, getting the vaccine, even though you still have a very, very small chance of getting corona, it is very truncated, just as though you would get the flu shot. You can still get flu, but it's a lot more truncated and decrease a lot of the side effects and the actual effects of the full-blown illness itself. Next slide. All right, how do I make appointments to get vaccine? All right, so as NYP patients, you can go directly to the vaccine together ny.org. All right, and there's going to be some information on Connect right there. The state also has a website for New York State residents, the covidvaccine.health.ny.gov, or you can call to which groups are actually eligible. At NYP, all right, they're currently vaccinating a little over 2,000 patients, and that's not including the own employees, meaning people that have direct patient-to-patient contact. All right, and the patients that are being vaccinated, the site is located at the Fort Washington Armory, and I'm sure there's actually more locations that they're trying to get to that being, especially now that the governor on the 14th of February is going to release the 1B plan as far as vaccinating people that have that have more chronic illnesses. For now, the availability is prioritized the residents of the Armory's local community who are over 65, but have access to broader parts of the New York State or New York City area. All right, and as more vaccine becomes ready, NYP is becoming mobilized, and they just ask you to keep on checking on their website. They update it daily and keep updated with the Connect, which is for patient information. All right, next slide. So what can you do? What's the light at the end of the tunnel? All right, I wish I was talking to you guys in person. I'm a very active guy, but we are gonna get through this. All right, it's gonna take time. All right, for us to have an understanding of the vaccine, how it affects people, what are the side effects, all right, potentially, all right, but we do know that it does work, all right, and even if you are vaccinated, all right, you still have to wash your hands, all right, soap and water or an approved alcohol-based hand scrub, wear a mask, all right, and don't worry if it's N95, cloth, just wear something over your face, all right, especially if you want to be respectful of other people, and watch your distance, meaning social distance. All right. Just a side note, I want to let you guys know that even in the Super Bowl, they're watching their distance during the halftime show. I don't know if you guys watched that, but greater than 6 feet and respect each other. Next. All right. So as a final speaker, I want to thank everyone on this talk. I know I'm going to speak for Dr. Kelly and Dr. Melville. We are very proud to service you all as a community and as educators who you guys are also essential employees. My wife is an educator, and I know Dr. Melville's husband is an educator. We all appreciate everything you do. Yeah, it's really hard to teach. I do know, especially at a distance, but you guys are doing an amazing job. God bless you.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Ayala. And thank you, Dr. Melville, Dr. Kelly. So, Peter, we do have a few questions if we can entertain them.
Sure. If you see them in the chat, please go ahead and answer them.
Yeah, sure. So the first question is, can children of hospital staff members have their children vaccinated if they meet the criteria? Do you want to talk about whether or not children meet the criteria?
Sure. I mean, so right now, none of the vaccines have been approved for children I believe, under the age of 16. And so when all of this research is being done, like Dr. Melville had alluded to, they look at specific groups of populations. And so we look at all ages, but unfortunately with all ages, that doesn't include children. So they've looked at 16 and above. I believe Moderna is 18 and above. I might have those reversed. We look at certain things like pregnancy, looking at elderly, looking at comorbidities, and we try to see who this vaccine is effective for and not. Currently, they are trying to collect data on the younger kids. There are some studies that are currently looking at children under those ages, but as of now, they are not supposed to be getting vaccinated. So the answer would be no.
Thank you for that, Dr. Kelly. We have another question. What's the current data on efficacy of these vaccines with the emergent variants?
I can take that one. I just want to follow on what Dr. Kelly said quickly, though, that I think when 16-year-olds who meet criteria are eligible, I'm sure that the NYP clinics will be offering the vaccine when it's available to them. So when it's available to the clinics, it'll be available to them. That was just a follow-up question by that same attendee. As to the efficacy with the variants, so for the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines, it looks like they are quite efficacious, or they do work quite well against all the variants that we have identified so far. There is a question with AstraZeneca and the South African variant. It's not, now, when we talk about efficacy, remember what we're saying is that the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine are 95% approximately effective. That's very, very high. So if there were decreased efficacy, let's say it was down to 60%, that's still very good. And the three of us, Dr. Kelly, Dr. Ayala, and myself, are thrilled to get our about 50% effective flu vaccines every year. So putting it into that context should still be reassuring that this is worthwhile, even if there's going to be some changes with new variants. And also, to put it into perspective, the more of us who are vaccinated, the fewer of us will be infected, and the less opportunity the virus will have to continue to mutate and make new variants. So yes, these two vaccines are effective, and yes, it's a good idea to get vaccinated.
Can anyone explain why 5% would not be effective? Why it's not effective in 5% of the cases?
I'm not sure if we know why they aren't. When we look at most vaccines, the ideal rate to get to is 100%, but that's a pretty rare phenomenon in vaccine production. And so we try to get it as close to 100% as possible. I think one of the really important things to take from this information out there is when we look at the Moderna numbers and we look at the Pfizer numbers, although 95% effective, people may say, well, what if I'm one of that 5% that still gets it and I'm going to be horrible? The great thing about it is just because they contracted the disease, because they contracted COVID, all of those patients, none of them had serious illness. So patients that contracted it, if you take 100 people, 5 people actually still got coronavirus. Those 5 people typically did not end up in ICUs, did not end up being intubated, and did not end up dying. So we look at various things. If it was 100%, that would be fantastic. But unfortunately, science and medicine just doesn't work that way. And we would love to have it that way. But for whatever reasons, there are those things that kind of slip through the cracks.
I just saw, if I may, I want to piggyback what Dr. Kelly said. So what he was saying, we want to reach 100%, not possible. We yearly get a flu vaccine that, if we're lucky, breaks 60 to 70%. And this is the reason why people had that question, why do we have to get a second vaccine or a second dosage? It's because the body is trying to mount that response. I know even with some of the childhood vaccinations, such as MMR, and the lot, people still need booster shots. All right. But again, piggybacking what Dr. Kelly said, if you do get infected, it is entirely a lot more truncated, the illness, and the symptoms are very mild, which we as practitioners have been seeing in the emergency department.
Thank you for that. I'm glad you pointed out the flu because I feel like that's an important point. There's this another question here, and I haven't seen anything else, so maybe this may be the last one. Others too. Could any of the panelists briefly touch on the rationale for use of the RNA vaccine approach versus the older attenuated virus approach?
Sure. I mean, I'll talk about it. This goes back to kind of what I was saying. The major difference between the two is that this is a much safer mechanism to give patients the vaccine. It's giving them kind of the blueprints, or almost like it makes you present that little wanted poster, and makes the body aware of the coronavirus without ever having to give it the coronavirus. When we think about the flu vaccine, okay, the flu vaccine works differently. We have to give you a weakened form of the flu so that your body can recognize it and create antibodies. And people are always nervous. Am I going to get the flu from getting this? You cannot get coronavirus from the COVID-19 vaccine. It's just not designed that way. It simply helps you create, again, the blueprints for those spike proteins. It has nothing to do with the bad part of the virus, the viral pathogen part that causes you to have lung problems, that causes you to have heart problems, brain problems, kidney problems. There's no way of it happening that way, which is why this is such an amazing thing. And it's really, for us as medical providers, we feel that it's extremely safe to give, much safer than if we were to give a weakened form of COVID-19.
Thank you for that. Oh, go ahead, Dr. Hill.
I can't help it. Dr. Kelly and Dr. Ayala know I'm a little bit the sciencey, researchy, whatever. I just have to add, like the killed vaccine is actually quite safe. So if that were an option, it is also quite safe. But you have to get all that vaccine and properly kill it, and then make sure that it's both completely not able, it's not viable, it's dead, and also still has all the spike proteins on it that we want you to react to. Where this mRNA bypasses all that, it can be very quickly produced, and it's just, it's a signal to your immune system to put on a coat that looks just like the coronavirus. And then the other part of your immune system goes, oh, I don't like that coat. That's really ugly. I'm going to get rid of that. And then your immune system fights it off. It never touches your DNA. And it's just much easier to produce in large quantities because of that, because you don't have to have the whole virus.
Thank you for clarifying that. So there's an ethical question in the Q&A, but I think I'm gonna leave that for last. But for now, we have two people with raised hands. So I'm gonna go first to Judith, who I believe raised her hand first.
Hi, I was wondering, why doesn't the immune system attack those cells that are making this spike protein, especially after the second dose? And also, can those who are vaccinated still transmit the virus to other people, or are both vaccines about the same in terms of protecting against infecting other people once you've been vaccinated?
So actually, the immune system does fight off those cells that produce the spike protein, and that is your immune response. That's how it works. It creates antibodies, which then react to those spike proteins that have been made by the other cells, and then it kind of relaxes because those go away. You don't get a lot of this mRNA, and the mRNA is destroyed. So once you get that shot,
does it kill those cells? I mean, the cells that are making it.
That's how your immune system works for everything you're exposed to. So if you get the common cold, some of your cells kind of surround the common cold and then put its proteins out on their surface, and others of your cells kill those cells and then learn to make that same protein, and you fight off an antibody to that protein rather, and you fight off the common cold. Unfortunately, we haven't figured out a good vaccine for that because the common cold changes its coat over and over and over again in so many ways that we can't give a vaccine for it. Transmissibility, I can start the answer, and I'm sure Dr. Kelly or Dr. Ayala have more to say about that. But essentially, the answer is we don't know. We think probably we won't make as much virus in our bodies, so therefore we won't have as much in our nose and our mouth, so therefore we won't transmit it as much, but we don't know. So for right now, we have to assume that we can still make extra copies of the virus in our body when we get exposed to it until our body fights it off, and that it can be in our mouth and our nose, and therefore we can potentially be infectious. But that's what we're going to learn in the future by following everybody.
So still wear a mask even after you're vaccinated, so you don't infect others.
Right.
To still abide by social distancing practices, to limit your exposures to large groups, and to wear a mask, because we just don't know. But hopefully that data, now we've got, I don't even know how many millions of people we already have vaccinated. Hopefully that data will come through and through as we have more time and more people vaccinated. We're hopeful. We're very, very hopeful.
Thank you.
There are other questions?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. So, so when we look at the variants that's starting to spread, like the UK variant and the South African variant, and then you also couple that with super spreader events, like if you look at what happened after the Super Bowl, streams of fans paraded the streets unmasked and things of that nature. So it just seems that, given how contagious these variants are, we're expecting to see an increased infection rate as time goes on. So my question is, does it make sense, and there's been discussion on this, does it make sense, because vaccination distribution is so slow, does it make sense to basically vaccinate people with one dose as opposed to 2 doses for the time being, to help stem off the impacts of the variant? So that's my first question. My second question is, in terms of vaccination distribution and equity around it, you hear about other communities where people outside, like you heard about the Bronx, people coming from outside to get vaccinated, whereas the number of Black and brown individuals who are getting vaccinated is low, compared to white counterparts. So what is New York Presbyterian doing in terms of outreach to ensure that that doesn't happen in this instance, so that we do have equitable distributions in regards to vaccinations?
I can actually take that one. And thank you for asking, Neil. So my role is actually within the Community Affairs Department at New York Presbyterian. And I actually, even though I serve the Brooklyn campus, I'm part of New York Presbyterian as a whole. And I actually work at the vaccine center on Thursdays in the mornings from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. up at Washington Heights. And so there's a few different things that we're doing, that we're putting in place to make sure there's equitable distribution of the vaccines. First, and if you go to vaccinetogetherNewYork.org, you'll see that we give 60% priority to the people in the surrounding neighborhood of Washington Heights. And there are certain zip codes that fall within that catchment area. And that's, we want to make those available to folks at a walk-in basis, because we know, the system's kind of flawed to begin with, where a lot of the ways people can access and get more information about it is all online, right? And so not everyone has access to the online platforms. So we wanted to make sure that there was access there for folks who don't have Wi-Fi, who don't have access to the internet, so that they can walk in and get the vaccine that way. Another way that we're doing outreach is also, establish the, NYP has 10 campuses across, as far down as Brooklyn and as high up as Hudson Valley. And so I have counterparts in each of those campuses. And what we're doing is, we have relationships with community-based organizations, with community boards, and we're working with those community-based organizations to not only do talks like this to sort of educate and provide more information so that their constituents and their members can make informed decisions, but we're also letting them know, especially in the folks who are in and around the Washington Heights area, the vaccine's available to them and they can come and walk in for it. And we have folks there who speak Spanish, and we have language interpreters who can interpret in various languages as well. So I mean, the equity piece is really important, and I'm glad that you bring it up. And it's something that the hospital takes very seriously, and it's something that the hospital has a commitment to making sure that there's access. And we recognize that there are certainly large groups of people who are left out by, you know, an online platform only, or, you know, also the site up at Washington Heights. Somebody asked a question about, can you get the vaccine at NYP in Brooklyn? We're focusing all of our energy in Washington Heights, and it's actually taking quite a lot of energy. Many people have been redeployed to work at that site. So it's not likely that a site will open up in Brooklyn, but there are plenty of sites through the city and the state which are available at that link that I put in the chat. And there are many that pop up every day. So I'm gonna stop it there, and I'm happy to connect offline, Neil, too, with more information. But I don't know, Peter, there's more questions coming in as we go, so I don't know what you want to do here.
I just want to.
Let's go for a little bit longer. I think, you know, we don't have much of an agenda, so, you know, another 10 minutes or so would be fine.
Yeah, I just wanted to answer the next question he had, Mr. Neal. He was asking about, you know, does it make sense to just give one vaccine dose, all right, and allow more people to at least get the first dose? So the real answer is, one, it depends on how much doses there actually are to give around. As you know, there's issues in trying to get supply going. It is studied, the actual immunity and a robust response in 2 doses. So it is a little bit of a catch-22. Do you just give 1 dose and have a kind of attenuated response, meaning immunity, or you give the 2 doses and have that full robust greater than 95%? So it is tough. I know that's a valid point that Mr. Neal did make, but the recommendation is for 2, and trying to make sure that we gather those people that are getting the first shot for the second one. So it is really tough. And then Ms. Avellino just mentioned what they're doing to actually make sure to reach out to those underserved communities.
This is a question countries are grappling with, right? England was grappling with the idea of doing a 1-dose rollout, but I'm hopeful, this is just my personal opinion, not an expert opinion, but I'm hopeful that the current change in dedication to the science and the use of the defense funds, and that will allow the production to ramp up, that it won't be necessary for us, that we will be able to double dose people.
Thank you for that. Okay, so the questions are coming in hot and heavy, but so I want to get to Joanne Brown because she's got her hand raised.
Joanne, remember to unmute yourself.
Oh, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. No, my question is that I'm listening to you, but then they are opening up all these here large facilities, but then we're right here, like in the lower downtown Brooklyn area. I know we have the Barclays Center over there as well. Are y'all looking to go to the Barclays Center to do our COVID testing over there as well? And my next question is to the people that has like a real severe problem, like asthma, severe asthma, or arthritis, or either diabetes, or well, just say whatever that they have, and then suppose if they give them the wrong shot, you don't give them that shot, and then it triggers. But then if you don't have the information, bro, that the person tell you that they have like allergies to peanut butter, or either peanuts, or either something, the grass, trees, or whatever. Do y'all take in consideration that those people have those their health problems, and do y'all being more concerned of those people that have the low line sicknesses and like those there are like trees, grass, and all that stuff? That do y'all take considerations in that too as well?
100%, absolutely. One of the big things that we see with our patients, you know, one of the big concerns, and you probably heard it a lot in the news, is people having anaphylaxis or bad allergic reactions to the vaccine.
Well, I know that's me.
Right? So Now, it's not very common, but it's not
Mhm.
unheard of. It has happened. And lots of people have had it with other vaccines. So if you've had bad reactions to vaccines in the past, it's something that you do want to discuss with your doctor. Now, if you do have bad seasonal allergies, or you're allergic to milk or to eggs, then that is not a contraindication to getting this vaccine. But we're concerned about you. We don't want bad things to happen to you. So once you get that vaccine, we will often keep you there for 15 to 30 minutes to ensure that you don't get a bad reaction. Because most people that get a bad allergic reaction, it happens within the first 15 minutes. And so,
Okay.
we want to make sure that you are safe. If you do develop signs of swelling, signs of a bad allergic reaction, we have medication that we can give you. And the nice thing is we take care of you right then and there. Hopefully that's not the case, but of course we take that very, very seriously because we want everybody to feel safe. And a lot of people who have bad disease like that, bad asthma and stuff, you're the prime
That's
person
me.
that we want to get this vaccine because we don't want you to get COVID. We want you to be protected from COVID. And so that's why we encourage you to get the vaccine. Let us watch you when you get the vaccine for 15 to 30 minutes to make sure you're okay. And then we know that you're at much less risk for developing bad COVID should you ever contract it. But hopefully you won't.
Oh, okay. Because I was more concerned of that. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off that, Dr. Kelly. I do want to say anecdotally, at least 3 of my colleagues were concerned about having a severe allergic reaction, as you were, Ms. Brown. And all 3 did not have a allergic reaction, even though they've had them to the past from previous vaccines. So again, very low risk. If you do get sick, we're there to take care of you. And also there is information that is distributed after getting the vaccine. If you do have any sort of responses, we want to know about it, all right? So we can better manage you and help you.
So then I should bring, so that if that's the case, then I should, if the people, then they should bring in, like something from their doctor telling them about that they are allergic to this and that, they have asthma, they have this and that. And then at least you'll know what they have rather in front of you. If that's,
Exactly. We could be better prepared, but even afterwards, we're also prepared to help you.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone.
Welcome.
Thanks, Ms. Brown. I think that may be it for our questions. And so I just want to let folks know, I put in the links for Vaccine Together New York, which is the site up at the Fort Washington Armory for New York City residents over 65, with a special priority given to the neighborhoods surrounding Washington Heights. And then you can also call 311 for the city locations. I will say that for the NYP site, we're not doing the 1B criteria. We take our guidelines from the state, and we're only allowed to do New York City residents over 65. But the city locations have that expanded criteria, and you can get that also from calling 311.
Last question.
Go ahead, Robert.
Since it's way uptown from here, there is a group or a way, I don't think it's city funded, to take a taxi or a car service for those over 65, is my understanding. Do you know that number or name of it, how to get that?
I don't know that offhand, but I'm happy to look into it. I don't know if 311 has more information on that, but I'm happy to look into it and get back in touch. I also just want to say, the only walk-ins we can accept at that location are from the surrounding neighborhood. So if you're not going to be a walk-in, but you do live in New York City and you're over 65, you'd need to make an appointment on vaccinetogetherny.org. And those appointments, certain appointments are released at different times of the day. So unfortunately, there's not like a time when you'll know you'll get an appointment, and it's just something that you need to constantly check in with. But I'll try to get more information about the free service or a reimbursable service.
I'm looking right now online for you, and there was something called Vaccine for All, the city to offer transportation for New York City seniors to get the vaccine. Of course, when you link to it, this is no longer in service, but we'll try to find out for you and see if we can get more information for the group.
Yeah, pass it on to Mike, and Mike will pass it on to Bob.
Great.
Yes, and the other thing I wanted to mention too, Peter, is that we have PDFs of information in Spanish, Chinese, English, and I think French right now in just more information about the vaccines and about COVID that I'm happy to share with Mike that can be put out in maybe one of the newsletters, and more languages coming soon.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you all from the people from Methodist Hospital. We truly appreciate the information you've provided. And, I wish everyone luck. I'm hoping to get a vaccine myself next week when they expand to 18 to 64 with an at-risk condition. So pray for me on Monday when I go in to try and do that. And we'll see what happens. So thank you all very much. We really appreciate it. Mike is going to be on in just a minute, and we'll do our district manager's report. But if the next thing to do would be our representative elected officials. So if there's one here, if you can just come on and say something and introduce yourself, we'll go that way until I see who else is on.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. We really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Be safe.
Thank you.
Any representatives of elected officials that want to say anything? Remember to unmute yourself.
Peter, just because I'm still unmuted, it looks like there's a community liaison by the name of Donna Newton here for Joanne Simon.
Yes, I see that. Donna, you're welcome to speak. You just have to unmute yourself. Ty, is she able to unmute herself?
I'm working on that right now.
Okay.
Okay, Donna's a panelist now and should be able to unmute herself.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you all. I want to thank everybody at Methodist for giving us that fantastic presentation. I just put in the chat, it was announced today from Cuomo's office that there are going to be some larger sites coming online in Queens and Brooklyn. Medgar Evers is going to be a vaccination site. They're planning on vaccinating up to 1,500 people a day at each site, so a total of 3,000 people a day. Now, once again, I caution you, and I'm sure you've heard this a million times before, that this is reliant upon vaccine availability, but the capacity is going to be there. Separately, I just wanted to say that we've sent around an email. I'm sure many of you have gotten it. Joanne sent around an update recently. We're having an upcoming joint CEC town hall on special education and mental health, and that is happening tomorrow night. I'm going to put the information about that into the chat now. We also are accepting questions for the panelists in advance. So if that's something that you're interested in, please go ahead and register to be there, as well as if you have any questions that you'd like everyone to have in advance, please go ahead and fill out that form for the questions. Additionally, we're going to be having one of our, every now and then Java with Joanne, which we wish that we could have these in person in a coffee shop like we used to. But right now they're going to be on Zoom, and we have one coming up in about a week or so, which I will also put into the chat for you. We're also doing a Black History Month essay activity for middle school students in the district, in District 52, asking them to write a 1 to 2 page essay about Black history. any type of Black history, any particular person that they admire. And we're going to be featuring those essays in our Smith Street window. If you're not aware of the fact that we actually do have people very safely and socially distant going into the office, if you need to come by, if you need to pick up the parking calendar, which we now have. If you'd like to pick up your recycling stickers, please come and say hello. Please be wearing a mask. If you need hand sanitizer, we're handing that out as well. We also want to tell you that the New York State Health Insurance Marketplace deadline has been extended to March 31st. So if you are in need of health insurance, please take advantage of that. Once again, it's really great to see everybody. Looking forward to working with you in the future, and have a good night.
Next would be Matt Baer from Senator Myree's office. And again, please remember to unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Just a couple of quick updates from Senator Myree. First of all, thanks to everyone who has been so supportive. As many of you maybe know, Senator Myree came down with COVID himself a few weeks ago and has been recovering and recuperating at home since then. So he's been keeping abreast of everything happening across the district, but he's grateful to all of the well wishes he's received and hopes to be back out there very soon. Really grateful to the folks at Methodist for the information on vaccinations. We were really glad to hear the governor's announcement today about the site opening at Medgar Evers, I believe on February 24th. On that same kind of note about testing and COVID testing, I just wanted to remind everyone that there are, while there are long lines and long waits that we hear about at some of the larger testing sites and city MDs, there are actually a number of smaller city-run testing sites in Crown Heights, specifically on Albany Avenue, a little further into our district, with very low wait time, sometimes no wait time at all. So folks should know about that, and we post those on social media every week. February 14th is the last day to change your party enrollment or enroll in a political party for the upcoming primaries, just so everybody knows about that. I'm sure most folks here already are covered, but just in case you need to know, that's the date to make sure you're enrolled in a party so you can participate in the primaries in June. And then finally, just a piece of legislative news on Clean Slate, which is a legislation that would allow for automatic expungement for New Yorkers returning home after a criminal conviction once they've served their time. Currently, it's a very convoluted process under state law now that's only available to a small subset of folks, and an even smaller subset have actually gone through that process. And this would create an automatic expungement process for those folks. I'm happy to talk a little bit more about that some other time, but we are planning a launch event for our Clean Slate legislation with the coalition on February 25th at 10:30 a.m. So we'll have more information about that soon, and we'll pass that along through Mike. And I believe that is all. Our office is currently closed. Everyone's working remotely, but we're happy to serve constituents remotely and provide businesses and homeowners with PPE if needed. That's all. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Dan Wiley from Nydia Velasquez's office.
All right. Thanks, Peter. I was able to figure out how to make my webcam work. I had CB2 on a not a Zoom, but the other application, and I realized that it was taking up my webcam. Anyway, sorry I missed the last meeting. The last meeting we actually had a small business relief town hall, which was just before your meeting. So I was so fried from that, I totally flaked on your meeting. But I wanted to be at your last meeting from what happened after January 6th. And of course, we're seeing that impeachment trial going on now. The Congresswoman is fine, and she's, of course, Nydia Velasquez is the chair of the Small Business Committee. And so she had a markup, she led a markup today of the Small Business Committee part of the relief package that is to deliver more relief for small businesses, adding $50 billion in the House bill in stimulus aid for small businesses, including $25 billion for restaurants, in particular small independent restaurants, to make a grant program for restaurants, and also to put in another $7.25 billion for the Paycheck Protection Program, to expand it to nonprofits and digital news, and also to places like the YMCA and Goodwill that have multiple locations, so they could access the funding, and also the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, another $15 billion on top of the $20 billion that was added for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan for small businesses, which is key because businesses didn't get as much as they were trying to, they didn't get what they should have gotten in the first round, and also more assistance for disadvantaged and minority businesses. So that's what she's working on in DC right now. EPA, many of you on CV6 are members of the Gowanus CAG, so you've gotten, but I'm going to blast out to a broader array of folks in Red Hook and Sunset Park, as well as Gowanus, EPA's final report on the barge incident. The barge was moored off the coast of Red Hook and Sunset Park in what is just adjacent to Gowanus Bay. And there was an accident where there was a gash on the side and the barge had sunk, but it's a shallow area, so it hadn't fully sunk, but it was partially submerged. Not all most of the material was retained. The final report outlines what the cause of the gash that caused water to inundate in the barge was, and what precautions and protocols they're putting in place to better monitor what's going on in the staging area with the barges, and also better monitor where they're tied up and do more precautions in terms of where they're located, where they may be more exposed to sea kind of conditions. So that report is out. Also, we've been very busy even before Christmas with all the shootings that happened in Red Hook, Gowanus, Wyckoff, Warren. We've seen a great uptick in shootings and homicides at the end of 2020. And so we convened a meeting with local elected officials in the PSA 1, Police Service Area 1, and the 76th Precinct, 78th Precinct, 84th Precinct. And we're looking forward to do more work in the new year to try to make sure we prevent these kinds of things happening, kind of beef up the Mayor's Action Plan intervention in Red Hook to expand it to Gowanus and Wyckoff. And also in terms of Red Hook, that we've also just had a follow-up meeting on all the gas outages that have occurred in Red Hook with all this construction going on, which is really tough this time of year. So we did a meeting with NYCHA operations and capital, as well as Red Hook Community Justice Center and some of the tenant leadership and tenants to go over the status with those restorations and the need for capital infusion to address the 80-year-old risers that is the gas pipes that feed the public housing. So while a lot of the Sandy resiliency work is working on pods and modernizing how to get energy to the buildings, the infrastructure in the buildings is so old, it's basically crumbling. So we're calling on local electeds in the mayor's office to pony up money, emergency money, to try to proactively fix some of the gas infrastructure in the housing. The last thing I'll say is the Congressman has a bill to fully fund the capital needs of public housing. And this is something we'd like to see broad support for. The capital backlog at NYCHA is huge. It's also huge across the country for public housing. And she has a bill to fully fund the capital needs backlog in public housing. So anyone who wants to support that, contact me. And it's something we should really do on the federal level, but also as the emergencies exist, have to happen at all levels of government. So with that, thank you very much. And sorry for taking so much time, but I missed the last meeting, so I figured I'd go over my quota. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Dan. Taika from Scott Stringer's office.
Hi, everyone. Hello.
Everyone, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. It's good to be back here tonight with Community Board 6. This is Taika Haraguchi from Comptroller Stringer's office. I just wanted to share a few short updates. So I announced this last meeting, but just to remind folks that the application for our paid summer internship program ends on March 5th. I'll drop the link in the chat. And then secondly, on Sunday, the comptroller unveiled his food security plan to combat hunger in New York City. The plan offers immediate local, state, and federal recommendations to close gaps in emergency food programming. It calls for the creation of a $25 million city-based emergency food program to serve undocumented New Yorkers left out of federal and state safety net programs, a quote unquote shared delivery zone program that centralizes neighbors' food deliveries to meet online retailers' minimum purchasing requirements, as well as expanded SNAP outreach and purchasing power, and increased halal and kosher food options. I will be putting that link to the report in the chat as well. And finally, a week ago, the comptroller released his blueprint for strengthening public safety in New York City. He unveiled a detailed proposal to transform public safety, protect New Yorkers from violence, and invest in communities. It builds upon the foundation laid out by the comptroller's June 2020 analysis of the PD budget during the height of the Black Lives Matters protests. It moved $1 billion away from the PD over 4 years just as a baseline. So in this blueprint proposal, it outlines how to reimagine public safety in 5 parts. Part 1, it outlines how the city can take a multi-agency public health focused approach to community safety, transitioning those responsibilities away from the PD and investing in alternative responses and services. In short, core to reimagining public safety is changing our 911 system. Part 2 addresses the near-term spike in crime with proactive strategies and community partners. Part 3 details how to improve discipline, transparency, and civilian oversight of the PD. Part 4 speaks about ending the war on drugs, decriminalizing offenses that pose no risk to community safety, and reforming parole. And Part 5 speaks about operational and managerial reform of the PD. So I will put that report in the chat as well, along with my email address. So if anybody reads the report and they have any follow-up questions, please feel free to email me.
Thank you. Mike Resiopa, our district manager, is with us now, so we're going to ask him to give his report.
Hi, Peter. Hi, everybody. Sorry I was late there for a second. The last time I was this late was when I was coming back from Albany after the State of the State in January 2015, after being Assemblymember Simon's guest. I went and looked it up for the date. Anyway, I heard a few of the elected officials' reports. It basically covered a lot of things that I was going to mention. So it's one of the benefits of going earlier in the meeting. Thank you. I also want to thank, I wasn't here for it, but Lauren Avellino and all the doctors at Methodist Hospital, my place of birth, that presented tonight on the vaccine, and we'll be sure to share any information on that. And on that front, I just want to say one other thing that people have been emailing about and we are pushing for is certainly with regards to the Red Hook truck study that we have asked the new commissioner for, Hank Gutman. Before that, we had asked Commissioner Trottenberg, and we were going to stay on that because some of you may have seen in the news today that Amazon signed their lease and for the Red Hook warehouse, and we feel, and I think the community feels, and friends of ours at Resilient Red Hook and others made a really big effort with us to highlight this to DOT. And we understand that the city is under fiscal constraints, but this is a major issue. We're going to have multiple last mile warehouses there that will come online at different parts of the year. But we'll be going on that. And I appreciate so many people writing to me saying this is a major issue in Red Hook. And from there, and if you want to hear more about it or more from me specifically, feel free to sign up for our email list. Text BKCB6 to 22828. Go to our website, brooklyncb6.org, click the sign up sheet, or you can email me, mike@bkcb6.org, and just say, hey, add me to your newsletter list. Anyway, and one other thing, I want to thank Ty for standing in for me for a little while, and I know he's still there, but also Samara for handling the hosting duties, and also Samara setting up with Viviana, who is currently translating the meeting in Spanish. We hope to keep that going in the future and in various ways, because in my time and my time here, and over time, we've tried to make it more accessible, and under Zoom it's been harder. But I think, and I believe Peter mentioned this in the beginning of the meeting, that we're getting some suggestions and things like that. So it'll be so my point was, thank you to Ty, Samara, and Viviana for Viviana specifically for translating tonight, and I'll see you next month.
Did we miss any other representatives of elected officials?
Hi, this is Chantel Cabrera from Senator Kavanaugh's office.
Sure, go ahead.
Oh.
Sorry, I'm also on 2 meetings, so I wasn't sure if I got missed or if you all missed me. I just wanted to let everybody know that this week the Senate passed 11 bills that work to combat housing discrimination. I'm going to go quickly through those 11 bills. One is an annual covert fair housing testing. So this would be covert investigations conducted for the purpose of comparing how members and non-members of protected classes are treated. In that same vein, implicit bias training. So this would augment already existing expectations and make it a part of real estate brokers' license renewal process, as well as compensatory damages. So this would allow the Division of Human Rights to award compensatory damages, punitive damages, or other relief to victims of housing discrimination. Anti-discrimination housing funding. This legislation, Senate Bill S945B, would increase the maximum fine imposed by the Department of State on real estate licenses to $2,000 and direct 50% of the fine collected to newly created Anti-Discrimination in Housing Fund. Affirmatively further fair housing. This legislation, sponsored by the senator, establishes the state's obligation to affirmatively further fair housing. So this directs the commissioner and heads of all housing agencies to establish and administer housing programs in a manner that affirmatively furthers fair housing. Identify brokers. This legislation would require the real estate salesperson and real estate brokers licensed by the Department of State to write their name and license number legibly whenever required to sign a document to make it easier to identify brokers. Increases in required training. So this legislation requires additional testing and training for initial licensing of brokers and salespeople. Standardized client procedures. This requires standardized client intake procedures for real estate brokers and surcharge fee. This would add a surcharge to the fee paid for issuing or reissuing a real estate broker or salesman's license. Broadly more oversight and client demographic data. So this would require real estate brokers to compile client demographic data and submit it to the Secretary of State. We are also working on the COVID Emergency Rental Assistance Program. This was introduced in March, and we recently amended it to conform with the federal law allocating 1.3 billion of rental assistance in New York, including over 800 million coming directly to the state for tenants who have experienced hardship due to COVID-19. We are looking to implement it a little differently than the previous program. Tenants may receive up to 12 months of arrears under this program and under this implementation. Those arrears accrued on or after March 13th, 2020, and up to 3 months of prospective rental assistance. No tenant may receive more than 15 total months of cumulative assistance. Income eligibility and prioritization has changed slightly. Tenants must make 80% of the area median income or less to qualify, either at the time of application for the 2020 calendar year. Tenants with incomes under 50% of the area median income will be prioritized along with those who have been continuously unemployed for the 90-day days prior to the application. The ability of landlords to apply jointly with tenants will be a new feature as well, and the inclusion of all New Yorkers regardless of immigration status. The goal is to stand up a rent relief program that will get money to tenants with haste rather than waiting another 6 weeks to establish a program in the budget. In related news, at the end of January, in collaboration with Assembly members Dinowitz, Gottfried, and Simbrowitz, and State Senator Rivera, we urged the Department of Health to halt the untimely eviction of seniors in nursing homes. We believe, obviously, this particular population of individuals capture the intent of the SEFPA, the Emergency Eviction Foreclosure Prevention Act. So we are advocating for our older adults to remain in their homes safely. We spoke about previously the new Medgar Evers site. And as always, if anyone needs anything from us, you can contact our office via Greer Mayhew, and I will throw his email in the chat as I am standing in for him. Thank you so much, and have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Anybody else we missed? Seeing none. Is there anything else? If not, I thank you very much for joining us. I particularly thank our friends at Methodist Hospital for providing the presentation that they did. It was extremely informative. And that's the kind of thing that we're trying to deliver under the difficult circumstances that we find ourselves in. For those of you who are on the executive committee, we're probably going to try and have an executive committee meeting at the beginning of March before the next meeting. So keep an eye out for information on that. With that, I bid you a good night and thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.